A lot of people will die because of my actions today. That mental resolve was made as I was securely fastened to the harness of a chair inside the Flame Raven again as it sped towards the front line. Anxious about the looming military operations, I was not idle and had been ceaselessly using thought acceleration to review all the details and running simulations inside my head. Time itself seemed stretched from my point of view in this weird period. A short while into the flight, 4 Lightning Air Superiority fighters appeared on our flight path and settled into formation to escort the gunship. This much was known because even as I sat quietly on my chair with no outside view, encrypted communication chatter between the fighters could somehow just be heard inside my head once I consciously tuned into it. Somewhat mentally exhausted from my relentless and ceaseless review of the pending operations, I decided to take a break and eavesdrop on their conversation. Lightning 1, look at the huge gunship. Who is the VIP this time? Someone asked. No idea on that. Lightning 3, but be on the alert, the command mentioned high possibilities of sneak attack. Replied Lightning 1. You serious, Lightning 1? We are way back in the green zone. Say, any of you guys heard a rumor about the AA Manticores firing at an unknown target here recently? I heard it was some sort of cyber attack, got a friend stationed near there and he said all the rockets had been fired. Huh, ain't nothing gonna survive that kinda salvo. Someone laughed. Bah, I'd rather be in the front lines now teaching those darn rebels a lesson than escorting some unknown big shots, another replied. I heard the front is heating up so you might just get your wish after this run, Lightning 4. Alert. Reading on Auspex, bearing 12 o'clock. That startled me and I tapped straight into Flame Raven's Auspex readings. Sure enough, something appeared on the edge of the Auspex range. Detailed readings of the approaching aircraft from the gunship's sophisticated systems filtered into my head and one profile emerged. Archaeopter Stratoraptors. A cold and flat voice popped into the conversation. Lightning Squadron, this is Terraxii Prime Iota 47 of the Adeptus Mechanicus leading Stratoraptor Strike Wing Alpha. We are here to add to the escort of gunship Flame Raven. There was a pause. I guess the leader of Lightning Squadron was scrabbling to verify the identity of the new flyers. Roger that, Alpha. We just received updates from Strategic HQ on your arrival. Glad to have you with us. Your compliance has been noted. We will lead from the front. So the rumors are true. We have Cogs joining our side. Cogs was a derisive term used by some of the Imperials for members of the Mechanicus, the reason being Opus Machina. The emblem of their religious faith was a hybrid of human and cyborg skull in front of a mechanical cog. The Cogs sent their flyers too. Just who is it we are escorting, Lightning 1? SYRINE. One of the most powerful people on the planet was addressing me, interrupting my eavesdropping operation. Due to the excellent soundproofing of the gunship's interior, it was even possible to whisper while in flight. Yes, Inquisitor? You have my sincerest apology for what happened with Fulton, though I must confess my reluctance to punish him severely for his transgression due to the need for his talent for the uncertainties ahead. That, and the very unusual circumstances of your unique ability to be able to go psychic at will. Admittedly, I should have picked up on that part earlier with all your interactions with the Psychers, so I must say sorry again for my shortcomings. An Inquisitor was apologizing to me due to the actions of his subordinates. He must be up to something. He paused for a bit then continued, but Fulton did commit a grave mistake and nearly created a catastrophe. In the light of that, I would submit his fate to you after this war is over. His words prompted me to take a closer look at him. Is he throwing Fulton under the bus to save his own skin or bowing to SYRINE's background? I searched for my feelings and found myself harboring no ill will towards him nor the Psyker. In fact, in light of the competency they and the sisters had shown with the rapid developments, my respect for the people of this universe had been steadily growing. No harm was done, I replied. Please don't get too hard on Fulty. I was partly to blame too for what happened. I am grateful for the lesson and advice he provided, and I look forward to another session with him and Zali soon. That should secure Fulton's well-being for now. Fulty, huh? He chuckled upon hearing my usage of the Psyker's nickname. I see you generally have a benevolent approach to issues. Is that supposed to be a compliment? Anyway, if your appreciation is real, please help me at the meeting to push my plan forward. By the way, what happened to Neandra? The assassin's absence was felt and I was sure she was present at the fort in the morning. But in truth, I had an idea of where she had gone. Earlier in the flight, there was a sudden request from Cryptora to utilize my authority for masking some of our aircraft to fly deep into the rebel-controlled territory. They must have confirmed the whereabouts of the rebel leader. Knowing this was the decapitating move we had agreed upon, I obliged, followed his instructions, and with the back-end connection he had somehow established in the rebels' hardware, took over the control of a whole Auspex network belonging to the rebels through the Flame Raven's wireless connection. In what could be the litmus test for the whole operation, I observed through the readings as a group of aircraft from our side went further and further into rebel territory until they reached their destination without incident. One of those aircraft was a stealthy small strike craft that had the hallmarks of the Inquisition written all over it. That must have been where Neandra had gone. Let's see how Thaberus is going to answer me. From what you told me, a total decisive victory seemed like the only way for this world to survive. I will protect the Emperor's domain to the best of my capability. As for Neandra, she took an opportunity to strike on critical targets. Is she a Calidus Temple assassin? I asked out of curiosity. The Calidus Temple was one of the 4 major temples of the Officio Assassinorum, a highly secretive agency of the Imperium of Man's government that employs transhuman super-assassins to do its work. The temple itself mostly employs female operatives due to its unique requirements. Thaberus looked around before answering me. We were alone in a sectioned-off compartment, so our conversation being leaked seemed unlikely, but the mere mention of an Officio Assassinorum temple still seemed to make him uneasy. Throne, I hope you do not make a habit of talking about highly classified information so casually. Well? I smiled and pressed, merely more for fun seeing a stern person like him getting stirred up. No, he answered reluctantly, it is a long story for another time. Suddenly I became aware of the Flame Raven being targeted by a myriad of anti-air systems, and a flurry of IFF exchanges between systems soon followed. It seemed like we were near our destination. My stomach felt tight at the moment of truth. I was about to meet a lot of new people, most of which would be in a social league so out of reach in my previous gamer life. I was at a loss of what to do when the meeting actually happened. Inquisitor, I crumbled to the mounting internal pressure and whispered for help. You know of my real condition. Please help should you see me heading towards any social disaster later. You? Needing social assistance? He actually laughed. So mean. I cannot fathom a scenario where that would happen. At any rate, I am sure the sororitas present would not allow their holy daughter to be swarmed by the uncultured masses. You have no idea of the language they used to protest my solo interview session, as if I was in a position to bully one such as you. A while later, we landed and Thaberus led the party towards the rear hatch. It was a crowd. We were with Rantor, Herlindia, Fulton and Zali, with the additional Sister Wilmina and Tech Priest Datala joining in as liaison for sororitas and Mechonicus. I noticed the subtle nodding between Thaberus and Fulton. There must have been some standard psychic security measures being carried out discreetly by them. The rear hatch of Flame Raven opened and we were greeted by a small crowd. Standing in the front was Interrogator Amel, flanked by Palatine Alisaya and a decorated-looking female Scatorius who I did not recognize. Behind them were 3 small groups of people, inquisitorial goons-looking gunmen with extra soldiers standing at ease right behind Amel. The same group of sisters I recognized from the inner sanctum was following Alisaya, and a squad of Scutari rangers standing still like statues behind the female Scatorius. It looked like a miniature Imperium here. Hey, if we have Space Marines here we would make a complete set. I was still entertaining such silly notions when Thaberus stepped forward, prompting me to follow him down the ramp. Alisaya and the sisters saw me and their faces lightened up. I had this weird sensation as if meeting the fans of my own club, except my fangirls were all wearing power armor and armed with bolters. Sir. SYRINE. As Amel greeted us both, I could see a subtle change in the sisters' expression. Wait, are they getting slightly pissy now because the interrogator was addressing me without honorifics? These formalities concerns might become an issue in the future. Maybe I should get one of those sister famulas to sort out such matters after the war is over. Thaberus tilted his head slightly, silently inquiring about the crowd he was not expecting. They insisted on coming. Amel replied to the unspoken question. I nodded at Amel before greeting the others. Sisters, we meet again. Scutari, greetings. The sisters bowed reverently while the leading Scatorius performed her sign of cog as a formal return greeting. Greetings, Lady SYRINE. I am Kira Hetrix, Skitarii Alpha of the 2nd Cohort for Dominus Cycle's Expeditionary Force. We are here to escort you to the command bunker. Stepping into the command bunker, I could feel the eyes on me as my first time meeting with the governor and generals will be happening soon. So many people, so many important people were looking straight at me. These folk looked like characters straight from the concept artworks of the Grimdark universe. They all had an air of great importance about them that could only be cultivated with years of holding important positions. In front of me were rows of people wearing impeccable military uniforms with rows of glittering medals, and at the center of it all was a pretty blonde lady wearing a golden suit of power armor. As a mundane middle-level salary earner back on Earth, I never had the chance to meet any important individuals, let alone a group of high-level VIPs, but here I was, meeting the top-level people on the planet. Not of a country, but the entire planet. It would be straight up lying if I were to claim I was not nervous. My stomach felt like churning, but surely it was imaginary, as this body had yet to give me the slightest tissue yet. Esteemed luminaries, your attention please. Wellmanna spoke up, her voice amplified by the mini Lord Halo built into her scholar attire. We, the Adeptus Sororitas, wish to announce and welcome the arrival of our very important guest of honor. That was my cue and all eyes were on me. What was that old saying again? You can only make a first impression once, so better not screw this up. With this body, it should be no problem. Smiling at the crowd, my body moved naturally as it performed the Aquila curtsy. It came out smooth and easy. As the gesture was being done and my head was rising, I activated my halo on low intensity so as not to be too oppressive. A part of me knows this is somewhat cheating and underhanded. I am sorry, but too much is riding on this. I met with their gaze, seeing their pupils dilate, and gradually increased my golden halo's intensity. Noticing the unusual sight before them, the bunker quieted down from its bustling noise. When the whole bunker fell completely silent, I spoke, "Greetings to all. I am SYRINE, daughter of the Emperor and bearer of his authority, glad to be making your acquaintance." There was a slight pause before the sound of murmurs rose from the crowd. Amidst the little ruckus, the sororitas' representatives rose as one, led by the Canoness herself. They walked right up to me. They stopped in front of me, performed their Aquila signs and knelt. I, Diadina Grace, Canoness of Adeptus Sororitas representing the Order of the Shining Beacon, declare to all that we recognize your status as the holy daughter of the Emperor and the authority you wield in his name. Say what? Impossible. What absurdity is this? Amid escalated murmurs, a huge figure rose in the command bunker, walked towards me and bowed deeply. I, Archdominus Cryptora Cycle, the highest representative of Adeptus Mechonicus on this planet, hail the Omniscient Princess, direct creation of the manifestation of the Omniscia himself, and acknowledge the authority you wield in his name. Upon hearing this, the crowd erupted into an uproar and Thaberus stepped in brandishing his rosette. Order. People, order. We have a war to attend to for the Emperor's domain. This was the crucial part. While having the support of the Inquisition, sororitas and Mechonicus were important for legitimacy, in reality, the mundane masses still outnumbered the combined institutions more than 1,000 to 1. Knowing humanity, there would doubtlessly be political troubles ahead, but those can wait for after the civil war is over. I sighed internally, raised my hands and clapped once. As my hands connected, I cranked my halo to the maximum output for a split second and then turned it off, silencing everyone briefly for an opening to talk again. Thank you all for the welcome. While we have much to discuss, all will be for naught if we lose the upcoming battle, so let us win this first before anything else. I then started walking towards the planetary governor herself. As my intention became clear to the crowd, they made way and split like the Red Sea under Moses' command. Governor Catalina von Cleus, I greeted the lady in golden power armor with a slight bow. I am sorry for not announcing my arrival earlier. I will be in your care while staying on Nusquam. Arrangements were made beforehand to notify Catalina of my arrival, but she still seemed a bit caught off guard by my appearance. After looking stunned for a split second, Catalina's aristocratic instincts went back to work and she returned my greeting with an elegant Aquila curtsy of her own. It was I who must apologize. It grieves us all to show a prestigious guest such as yourself the current state of our planet. I will help where possible, I said in a less than subtle attempt to shore up her legitimacy as a ruler for the planet. Governor, time is short and the rebels will be making their move soon. Should we cut the pleasantries and start the last meeting before the decisive battle?
Indeed.
Will you do the honors of initiating the meeting?
Catalina was fast on passing the ball back. This planet seemed to be filled with quite competent people, so I nodded and turned to Cryptora. Archdominus, kindly start your presentation.
It was strange to witness people clapping at the conclusion of a war plans presentation. It had an eerie resemblance to the chilling scenes about a certain Operation Dark Storm from that depressing anime from many years ago. I was just hoping the actual execution of it would not be mirroring that disastrous result, but there was a key difference here. We were aiming for mass salvation, not destruction. You could say the push for my war plan was largely successful and had gotten everyone on board. Cryptora showed proof of our capabilities by disclosing the details on the strikes we made on the outposts earlier, but kept my true ability under wraps to the new squimmies for the moment. The new squimmies themselves were kinda stunned by the ambitious scale of our plan and even did a standing ovation at the end of it. Well, given their prospects just went from the low chance of getting through this unscathed to potentially being big winners, it was an easy sell. Besides, it would be the Adeptus Mechanicus and Adeptus Auroritas that would be carrying out the key operations for the plan, so the new squimmies just had to do the easier part of holding up their battle line to fully benefit. Catalina was beaming at the end of it, and I could see she was smiling from the bottom of her heart. My guess was she had been keeping up a facade of a strong leader for a while now, and things were finally looking up. Thaberus also helped to push the acceptance of the plan by giving warnings on further potential threats and the prospect of little to no reinforcements on the way. Something did happen during the event as I noticed Amel and Raantor slipping out of the command bunker. It seemed like they were on a mission and some inquisitorial business was happening in the background. I did not have the full details, but hoped Thaberus' underlings were as competent as they looked. Naturally, the new squimmies tried to swarm me for more details after the presentation, but the sororitas' wall proved effective. I did have a brief moment with Governor Catalina to thank her for the support of the plan and took the chance to pass her the summary for incoming starship traffic from Arados. Catalina, I have some reports here that were meant for you. I then turned to signal Wellmanor, who was a few steps behind me. The scholar hurried forward and respectfully passed a parchment scroll to the governor. The governor received the parchment, opened it up hesitantly, and her eyes widened. What is with this amount of incoming starship traffic? The scroll was the summary list compiled from the astropathic messages Arados had received recently. According to him, it dwarfed the combined traffic for the last combined 50 years. Seeing her flinching at the report was kind of hilarious and the desperate respite I needed. Before the new squimmies' top brass left for battle, Thaberus dropped a gag order on them all, forbidding anyone to disclose my identity to people outside this meeting on pain of death and worse in our bid to exercise information control. The assembly was then dismissed as the time for the grand battle approached. I was later introduced to the other leading figures of the sororitas. Of note were the other three palatines, Sister Celisa Gallon, Sister Helen Tocatia, and Sister Domine Zeal. All were seniors to Alisaya and looking the part of a capable field leader for the Chamber Militant Order. As the palatines were present at the final war meeting and thus witnessed my halo manifestation, they reverently received me. It prompted me to realize how convenient all these setups were for SYRINE. Someone had been pulling the strings for at least 1,000 years to make all this happen. I then followed the sisters to an assembly for the final inspection on key elements of the operation with Tech Priest Data Liad, Skatari Alpha Kira and a skull probe from Cryptora following silently. Canonist Iadana was looking particularly delighted, like she could not wait to show me the result of her overnight labor. As I stepped out to another clearing, what awaited me left me speechless. On the field under a cloudy purple sky was a massed assembly of the elite units of sororitas seraphims in their familiar power armor with angelic-style jump packs, their dull silver power armor glittering under the rays of the late morning sun that managed to sneak through the clouds periodically. The seraphims were standing completely still, in stark contrast with the tail ends of purity seals on their armor that were waving gloriously in the wind. There was a low humming sound resonating in the air as the collective thrumming of active power armor sang in unison, anticipating the coming battle. My superhuman mind quickly counted their numbers and found there were 300 of them lining up in a military parade. The Order of the Shining Beacon had mobilized all their seraphims for this critical operation. In the cloudy sky above, unfamiliar-looking flyers were doing low passes in tight formations.
I soon recognized these as the Nuntia's Halo and Imagifier flyers, freshly awakened from storage by my request to join this fight. Giant holographic projections of the Order's symbol could be seen underneath some of them. This is gloriously magnificent. Magnificent work, sisters. I praised the Canoness and Palatines wholeheartedly, trying my best to play the part of being a leader who did none of the actual work but took notice of good efforts. The glorious sight of it almost brought tears to my eyes as my gamer self greedily soaked in the spectacle before me. In front of the 300 elite sisters stood a single seraphim more decorated looking than the rest. She was standing in attention with her helmet tucked underneath her right hand. This person's name had come up time and again during tactical planning sessions with Diadina and Mark Healer back at the fortress, so I knew who she was. Seraphim Excelsior Zafira Baio, the highest-ranking Seraphim Superior of the whole order. I almost lost myself completely to the visual spectacle before remembering my purpose here. I quickly summoned the skull probe over and connected myself to the network while walking towards Zafira. Zafira was dark-skinned, short-haired and had thick lips. Maybe a descendant of African lineage. She had the complete look of a no-nonsense, tough-as-nails lady you would expect to see as a squad sergeant in a classic sci-fi movie. Sister Zafira, I called out to her and formed my Aquila sign. We just met, but already a great burden was placed on you by me. On that note, I beg for your pardon. Zafira will be playing a key role in leading the Seraphims for the first phase of our operation. If successful, we could potentially silence all the big guns in the rebels' rear formation with minimum casualties, so a lot was hanging on her capabilities. Holy Daughter, she maglocked her helmet, returned the Aquila sign and replied, I was briefed on the operation and God Emperor willing, will not fail the mission. Zafira paused for a short while before asking, may I have your permission to ask some questions regarding this operation? I nodded for her to go ahead. The issue of the air transports has yet to be resolved, and how are we supposed to penetrate the rebels' air fighters' defense net with so few fighters on our side? As with standard practice on military matters, certain details were being withheld to prevent information leaks, and this lady was not afraid to ask key questions. I am liking her guts already. Complex imperial politics had shaped certain aspects of this civil war. A point not mentioned earlier was that since almost all Imperial aircraft were under the direct jurisdiction of the Aeronautica Imperialist branch of the Imperial Navy, the Master Chief Petty Navy Officer on the planet had greatly disapproved on the prospect of losing precious aircraft over the silly civil dispute. Said Navy officer had since put his feet down, forbidding both sides from utilizing any aircraft under his jurisdiction for the duration of this war. As a result, only a limited number of aircraft that was wholly owned by the Newsquamies locally had joined the fight, and heavy bombers were not involved in the battle. These unique circumstances had allowed both sides to mass tank columns without getting worried about being bombarded to Kingdom Come from the air. Still, the rebels currently controlled more aircraft than the loyalists on paper. From Zafira's point of view, this would be a great cause for concern, for she will be leading all of her order's precious seraphims for a deep strike mission without much air cover. Your transports are here, I said just in time as a fleet of Mechonicus air transporters appeared in the sky. I had been tracking them since they entered the radar net. Cryptora had kept them hidden, deploying these from his starship to stay away from any possible prying eyes until the last possible moment, only ordering them in when it was time to move out. As for the enemy fighters, have no worries, for we have methods to deal with them. I need to beg for your pardon again, as no further details will be given. All I can do is to ask you to have a little faith in our planning for that. If that is what is asked of us, very well. Zafira bowed. She then asked another question, this time hesitantly. Holy Daughter, we heard from the Canonus that you could manifest his light. Please, can we witness it for ourselves? His light? Did she mean my halo? I had been spamming my halo recently to get over tight corners and grew a bit weary about it. Frankly, it felt manipulative to the point that I was starting to feel uncomfortable about its usage on the people around me. Hold on, she said. We. By we do you mean everyone here? I asked. Zafira nodded. Inwardly I cringed hard at the request. The Adeptus Sororitas could rightly be considered as one of the biggest state-sanctioned dedicated fan clubs for the God Emperor of mankind, where membership is for life and the membership fee is eternal service to the Church.
It would be natural for them to seek out any tangible proof of his divinity whenever possible. Diadina would not skip such a golden opportunity to boost the morale of her order, as they had taken a few horrible setbacks lately. I took a closer look at Zephyr and realized she could not have been older than 30 years old, which prompted me to look at the rows and rows of seraphims behind her. Some had the visor of their helmet lifted so I could see a part of their faces. By the gods, most of them looked so young. Girls about half my mental age were geared up and prepared to go to war zones for their beliefs. Surely I could put aside my own feelings for a while and give them a light show? Feeling obligated, I nodded to Zephyr. I understand. Sister Markila, the relic sword please. Celestine Superior Markila had been hanging around carrying the sheathed nameless sword beside Diadina in what might be a vain attempt of enticing me to claim active leadership of the order. Sorry, but that is not going to happen anytime soon. I will consider that only after the war is over. For now, I just need the sword for the complete light show package and take this opportunity to live test the Nuncius Flyer's systems. Markila quickly walked over and presented me with the hilt of the nameless sword reverently, mimicking a scene I had witnessed before in that meeting room back in the fortress. Recalling how Diadina did it, I mirrored her stance, silently prayed to not screw this up and successfully pulled the sword out in one go. The nameless sword exited its sheath with a blinding light and became the focal point on the field. I ordered the skull probe over and mentally triggered the advanced selfie-picked feed function while accessing the wireless network with my authority to project the image and sound feed onto all the Nuncius Flyers. Immediately all the holographic projections on the flyers switched to gigantic portraits of myself via the direct live feed from the probe. This was starting to feel like a concert now. "Hello," I said to the skull probe, and through its microphone my voice echoed throughout the whole field via the Lord Hailers on the flyers. Well, this is the next level of cringe. It was so embarrassingly awkward my skin started to crawl, but there was no going back now. It was at this time at the back of my mind, where some cold calculations were always running, I realized the air transports will land in about a minute. It was kind of a social emergency, so I activated my thought acceleration to get some breathing space. I had no time and urgently needed a short pre-battle speech that is badass enough for this universe. Quickly I scanned my mind for all lore and contents regarding this matter, and only one result surfaced. Relieved, I gave a silent thank you to my old self for binging YouTube contents before changing the original text for my usage. They had all been briefed, so I will just go straight to the point. Looking at the silent crowd, I took a deep breath, raised my sword and activated my halo. The moment the assembled sisters saw it, their expressions softened and their eyes lightened up. Encouraged by their unspoken support, despite feeling ridiculous in front of so many people, I said the prepared words out loud. It was broadcasted clearly over by the Lord Hailers. Seraphims. Sisters. Absolution is at hand. We are facing our sacred duty. Let justice be your song. Let righteousness guide your weapons. We are the daughters of the Emperor. We are the bearers of his will, and our mission shall be done. For our undying Lord and Savior. For the Emperor. I finished the really short speech by firing up my halo up to the highest level while activating the psychic flames on the nameless sword. A huge plume, much larger and brighter than the one before, burst forth from the blade, and the seraphims who were previously silent broke out in thunderous applause. With my gigantic holograms in the air, a religious resonance of sorts happened, and the piousness was palpable in the air. The seraphims beamed, echoes of their joyous cries hit me like solid waves as they witnessed with their own eyes the proof of their god's divinity through my actions. For the Emperor. 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 The sisters' chants shook the field. Then the weirdest things happened, as if the heavens were answering. A strong ray of sun broke through the clouds to shine directly onto the field, illuminating the ecstatic sisters. He answered. Someone cried out, which only pushed their heightened zeal further. One could almost taste their emotion. I was totally stunned witnessing this ridiculous scene. What are the odds of the sun ray breaking through the clouds at this exact moment? As if answering my question, another thought immediately surfaced. Who are you yourself? Look around, aren't your very existence proof of his divinity? I looked back and found the Canoness and Palatines all kneeling behind me, some of them were weeping openly. The sisters continued their chants until the Mechonicus air transports arrived shortly. They landed in perfect synchronicity for the seraphims to board. Somewhat in a daze myself, I bid farewell to the sisters as they got on their way to war and took the extra care in giving directives to their canoness while returning the nameless sword to her. Diadina, please take care of your sisters and yourself. I look forward to your triumphant return, I said, indirectly prohibiting the idea of them resorting to martyrdom to achieve their mission. Unlike me, she will be heading to the field while I would be doing my part in the backline. Giving her the sword to keep was also meant to encourage her to come back in one piece, lest the priceless relic is lost in the chaos of battle. I have my selfish reason for wanting to minimize the potential casualties of the sisters. If a lot of the senior members of the sororitas got themselves killed in this battle, it might cripple the little Minoris order. Should that happen, the surviving sisters will inevitably look to me for future directions, and that would be a world of hurt which I want to avoid. Soon all the battle sisters had left for the battle, leaving behind the non-militant members and the Dominus liaison. Kira approached me with a bow. My lady, Dominus Cycle is waiting. Cryptora and I met up to go through with the final details of our plan. We were walking towards a huge setup the Mechonicus had prepared for this battle. My best description of it would be a podium of wires, a monstrous-looking contraption that was finished for the operation and placed in a discreet location behind layers of protection that seemed to be able to withstand even the ungodly firepower from a Titan. Wellmina, Verita and Kira were behind us, silently following. As we walked towards the monstrosity, my feeling of unease grew. For a fleeting moment I was not sure why I was there in the first place and tittered on the edge of having a panic attack. It was then the Archdominus spoke. I commend you. Your ability to grab a crowd's attention is remarkable, canted Cryptora. Is he trying to comfort me? Looking at the towering post-human, an idea suddenly came to my mind. Want me to teach you a trick? I asked. Trick? Undefined, however, please proceed. If you need everyone to listen to you in a hurry, do this. First, you slap your hands together loudly, then say this. Slapping my hands together producing a loud clap, I then proceeded to rub them together in a classic scheming pose mimicking a certain famous mad scientist from another far future before saying it out loud. Good news, everyone. Following my example, Cryptora slapped his primary hands together, but the sound that came out was a low metallic clink instead of a loud hand clap. He paused for a split second before concluding, Phase 1 failure, sound vibration quality unsatisfactory. Improvise, synthesis sound vibration for Phase 1. I offered. Recalibrating. Cryptora replied before slapping his primary hands together again. This time as his hands touched each other he played back the clapping sound I produced earlier with enhanced volume resulting in a satisfying clap, then proceeded to rub his hands together with the same scheming pose before saying out loud, Good news, everyone. Watching the whole thing happen, I was thankful for all the, regardless, action override messages that kept popping into my view. I was beginning to really appreciate it. Well done. I gave him a thumbs up. I will field test this trick when appropriate and report back the result. Cryptora replied as we reached the gigantic podium. My little tricks are nothing compared to your real groundwork. I praised him wholeheartedly and asked, how did you manage to get the timing of their grand assault so well? That part is simple. Through the information network of this planet, I had contacted all the tech priests and engineers who happened to be serving under the rebel side. To each and every one of them, a coded message that only a true disciple of the Omnissiah could decipher was delivered. I gave them two choices, serve the Omnissiah's plan or get out of our way. Fail to comply and I will personally see to it they will be hunted down and their data cores be melted for recycling. What are you? Some space godfather? I took another look at him, imagining the Dominus canting to himself about giving offers the followers of his cult can't refuse like a true techno-mob boss. I am so glad we have you on our side. I remarked truthfully, having Dominus Cryptora as your enemy on the other side of the battlefield was no laughing matter. As per your previous directive, I must inform you the action you are about to partake in will result in the loss of human lives, casualty estimates unknown, highly dependent on your performance and a variety of factors too complex to calculate. Due to your request and the 20-fold increase in data load required for the operation, there is a chance that the working strain might exceed your capacity to handle and we have no previous experience for such heavy use of your ability. In the light of that I have requested Inquisitor Thorn to provide dedicated medical personnel, just in case.
Somehow he was sounding like a nagging old dad again, but I was grateful. Who knew the person who was showing me the most care after coming to this world was from the Mechonicus, even if it was for his own ulterior motives. It was then I noticed the complicated expressions on both the sisters who were following us. Cryptora only spoke vocally when it was a necessity, so from their point of view, the Archdominus was simply dropping incomprehensible binary the whole time while I talked. It was such a classic sci-fi trope on the protagonist talking to a beeping robot sidekick. The whole scene must have been looking very confusing for the sisters, so I smiled apologetically to them. "Thank you, Crypto. Let us pray that." I looked up at the cloudy purple sky, thinking about all the people who were about to die today, and said the only thing that came to my mind. The Emperor protects.